Okay, so I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and its relationship to the human race. Um, AI has been around for a long time. I've been working in it since I was about 14. And our goal is to create intelligent machines, and obviously the more intelligent, the better. This is axiomatic in the way the field works. We think we're going to get there, and progress is accelerating for a number of reasons, which I'm not going to talk about. The reason why this matters is because everything we have as human beings comes, with a few exceptions, from our intelligence. And if we can amplify that intelligence, as we've seen in many ways already today, then the benefits to humanity are immeasurable, not just in terms of robots, but in terms of science itself. But if you look at the newspapers, you would have a very different sense of what was going on. We see many, many articles about killer robots, the use of AI to create weapons to attack humans. We talk about the possible elimination of large sectors of employment, as has already been discussed this morning. And we also talk about the end of the human race. So the first thing to do is just take a deep breath and remember that these are journalists. But also, you should panic a little bit. So when the Defense Department says they want to build autonomous weapons that hunt in packs like wolves, they mean that. And that's something that we should be concerned about. So let's talk briefly about lethal autonomous weapon systems. So these are systems, these are not drones as we see happening in Pakistan and Afghanistan, which are piloted by humans. These are robots that decide where to go, decide what's a target, and decide when to attack. And the alarm has been raised by various groups, including the United Nations, and there are treaty discussions going on pretty much right now in Geneva and have been going on since April of last year. The technology is not something that's a long way off in the future. This is something that essentially can happen right now. If there was a Manhattan-style project, we could be looking at fielded systems in less than 2 years. And the problem with these systems is that they create a new class of weapons of mass destruction that are extremely destabilizing to the international security situation because unlike nuclear weapons, which require a very large military-industrial complex, or ordinary conventional weapons, which require tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of soldiers to actually carry out large-scale attacks, with these weapons, you can just buy 1 million of them. You need a bank account. You need a couple of programmers to tell those weapons what to do. And then you can wipe out a large city or control a large country. So several people have been trying to raise the alarm and say that this isn't necessarily such a wonderful development. Earlier this year, an open letter was published that was signed by over 20,000 scientists. And the media have actually risen to the challenge. There are more than 2,000 newspaper articles published on this topic, largely in response to the open letter. And most of them, or almost all of them, have been supportive of the attempt to control the development of these weapons. For example, the Financial Times editorial from August of this year described autonomous weapons as a nightmare that the world has no cause to invent. So we can do one of two things. We can move quickly to ban these weapons now, or we can wait until an arms race happens, and then we start to see video footage coming back, not of a small boy drowned on a beach, but of a small boy being chased down a street by a robot and killed. At that point, I think the people of the world will have a pretty clear opinion about what should happen with these weapons, but it may be too late. On the subject of the end of the world, this also needs to be taken seriously, but it's a much longer-term question. So on this area, I would say the media haven't risen to the challenge. They have not succeeded in explaining what this is all about. It's not about armies of robots suddenly deciding that they're going to be conscious, and of course they all hate human beings. I am tired of lazy journalists saying, well, let's just run any old article which is an excuse to put up pictures of Terminator robots taking over the world. So I propose that we ban that particular image and various other related images from newspapers as soon as possible. So what are we concerned about? What is the issue here? So if we succeed, then we will have machines that are able to make decisions better than human beings. They'll be able to use more information. They can look further ahead into the future. And so just as we already lose to machines in chess, if you're in competition with machines, then you're likely to lose. So we have to make sure we're not in competition. But that's a very difficult thing to do because we provide the objectives to the machines. And if we don't provide objectives that are perfectly aligned with those of the human race, then by definition, we're creating a competition. And the problem is we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to provide objectives that we're happy with. So Norbert Wiener said this in 1960. We had better be quite sure that the purpose we put into the machine is the purpose which we really desire. And we have absolutely no real scientific basis for understanding how to do this. And you could say that King Midas had the same problem a long time before Norbert Wiener pointed this out. And what this means is, in fact, that the field of AI has to change to accommodate what has really been a blind spot in its development. So up to now, AI has pursued the capability to optimize any objective that's provided by what's called the user, which means anyone who wants to design or buy or adopt an AI system. And that simply isn't going to be a practical approach as we develop more intelligent systems. So the field has got to change to include the task of designing objectives such that the behavior resulting from optimization of those objectives is something that's really desirable. And this is particularly difficult because we're now talking about systems finding ways to optimize objectives that we never imagined because they are, by assumption, more intelligent than we are. So this leads to a task, a research problem, that's going to occupy most of my time for the next 20 or 30 years. Or if Jennifer Doudna gets her way, the next 50 or 70 years of my life. And that's value alignment. So how do we get machines to figure out what the human value function is? The approach we're taking is to learn the value function from human behavior. So our behavior is evidence for the objectives that we may not even be aware of, but we're implicitly pursuing through our choices. You can easily see, and I explained this to an audience of 12-year-olds earlier this week, and they easily saw that there are many difficulties in this, that humans are irrational, humans have conflicting values within themselves, different humans have different values, different societies have different values, but these are technical problems, as it were, that we have to address. People often raise the question that, well, this is all very well, but this is philosophy. We don't have to worry about this for centuries into the future, so let's get on with more serious things. It's very hard to say how long it's going to be before superintelligent machines are presenting us with these kinds of problems. Clearly, it's not just a matter of following Moore's law, as some have suggested. It's really a question of breakthroughs, conceptual breakthroughs that are required before we can have human-level intelligence. And breakthroughs are very hard to predict. But let me just give you one little cautionary tale from history. So on September 11th, 1933, Lord Rutherford, who was the most famous nuclear physicist of his time, said that really there was no possibility of ever extracting the energy from the atom. They knew that the energy was in there based on mass calculations and the behavior of radium and other things, but there was no practical possibility of ever finding out how to get it out of the atom. This was a very well-known speech, widely reported in the press at the time. It was read by Leo Szilard the next morning, and he invented the neutron-induced nuclear chain reaction because he was upset by the pessimism that Lord Rutherford had exhibited. So it went from never to less than 18 hours for a major breakthrough that totally upended the security history of the human race. So to summarize, we're moving towards an event which some have described as the greatest event in human history, and we haven't thought enough about what that means. It certainly means that we need to think very hard about the guidance of AI and its relationship with the human race. And Norbert Wiener, again, always the prescient one, said exactly this, that we have to do everything we can to try to solve this problem, even though it's incredibly difficult. An updated version of that from Nick Bostrom just this year. This is the essential task of our age. Thank you.